So today's learning is dedicated to the memory of Nachman ben Avram Yehuda Halevi, the father of our member Leo Bratman, and we wish the neshama and Aliyah and those who remember him many healthy years of remembering their beloved departed. And today we're continuing our discussion of the end of Brachos Taf Gimel Amud Beis, Brachos 3b, and the story, the mystical story of King David HaMelech, and his midnight alarm clock. And we talked about this idea that he had this, the Talmud says that he had a musical instrument hanging over his bed, and at midnight the northern wind blows, and it would cause his musical instrument to play, and he would wake up and study Torah. And so yesterday we explored a little bit of the symbolic significance of the northern wind. And what we talked about was the idea that the north wind symbolizes the darkness and the physicality of the body. It comes at midnight, and it is, and I wanted to return a little bit to the other place in Talmud where this north wind is referred to. And that is the story of how the Israelites in the desert, traveling through the desert for 40 years, did not circumcise their children for 40 years, because their sons for 40 years, because throughout those 40 years, the north wind did not blow. And the north wind is critical, says the Talmud, for the healing that's required after the circumcision, after the bris milah. And so it would be dangerous for them not to do a circumcision when this healing property is not available. The Talmud asks, why is this? Why did the north wind not blow for those 40 years? And it gives two reasons. And we asked a question on that, but we didn't address it really. The two reasons are, one was because since they were defiled by the sin of the golden calf, and therefore they did not merit this north wind to blow on them. The Ruach Tzifonis. The other reason given is because the north wind would cause the clouds of glory to dissipate. And therefore there was a protection from Hashem that they did not have this, that they did not have the north wind. So what I wondered yesterday, and what I want to address today is the north wind something that you want to have or something that you don't want to have? Is it a merit that you deserve and you lose if you're defiled by the golden calf? Or is it something that has the capacity to damage you by dissipating the clouds of glory? And the answer is that based on what we spoke about yesterday, that the Ruach Tzifonis, the north wind that comes at midnight, and the word Safon, north, refers to, also invokes the Hebrew word Safun, concealment, refers to the concealment that happens in physicality. And in this sense, with this understanding, we could understand why it is, how these two reasons both make sense, both fit. Because if a person is unable to properly integrate their physicality, the world that they live in would be a clouds of glory world. And indeed, this was the lifestyle of those Israelites of Am Yisrael as we traveled through the desert, through the Midbar. They were Dor De'ah. They are referred to as the generation of intellect. That their experience of God was having experienced the revelation at Sinai, experienced Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, but their experience of God was a theoretical one, because they had not yet moved into the land of Israel. And they hadn't yet learned how to integrate Torah in the fullest sense into their physical life. And this made them eminently vulnerable to a physicalization of God, to the sin of the golden calf. And so a people that could concretize God into a physical thing and could worship that physicality, it showed that they hadn't properly integrated their relationship with Hashem in the physical. They haven't learned how to make the north wind play over the 5-stringed harp, indicating the 5 books of Moses, the 5 books of the Torah. They hadn't learned how to integrate the concealment of the body, their physicality, with Torah, which ultimately makes music. And so therefore, they had to be protected by the clouds of glory. And any kind of bodily fortification, which is what the north wind is, it fortifies the physicality. Any kind of bodily fortification, such as the Ruach Tzifonis, would cause them to become too entrenched into their physicality, into the physical. And again, they would become obsessed with the physical, and like they did with the sin of the golden calf. And we saw through this struggle in last week's parsha with the Slav obsessing over eating meat, etc. As a matter of fact, during the time of the temple, they were not allowed to eat. They were not allowed to eat meat unless they brought it as a korban. This we'll find later in the Torah, that the only permission during the desert to eat meat was if it was brought as a sacrifice. But to be able to live a physically integrated life without that being conflict with their spirituality was something that they had not yet developed. And so therefore the Ruach Tzifonis is something that's meaning, let's say something like focusing on physical wellness to us is critical part of service of Hashem, because we understand that God can be served fully through the body. But for them, they had not yet reached that stage where they had integrated to that degree, and therefore physical wellness was a problem. I actually, it brings to mind a story when I was a teenager in yeshiva. We had a situation. London was a bit. This happened in London. I went to yeshiva in London, and we had a situation where I got into a street fight in London. Some Arab kids pulled up in a car and started yelling at me. I yelled back, and we got into a fist fight. And I felt that I didn't properly do the Jewish people justice in that moment, in this fist fight. Baruch Hashem, I came out okay. Once I started hitting back a little bit, the kid ran away and they drove off. But I felt that I could have done the Jewish people a little more pride in that moment. So I went out and bought myself a set of weights. Anyway, the mashgiach came into my dorm room in the yeshiva, and he saw the set of weights. And he said to me, Yossi, he quoted the Zohar, Tukva de gufa chulsha de nishmasa. The strength of the body is the weakness of the soul. And he advised against, working out. He didn't want me to become a bodybuilder. So I explained to him that I'm not planning on being a bodybuilder, but look, I feel like, it's tough times. We have to defend ourselves. And okay, so he let me keep the weights. But there is this sensibility that it's possible for a person to become too obsessed with physicality to the detriment of their spirituality. And so this can be, if our relationship with God is one of dordeya, one of only intellect, then physicality is kind of a distraction from intellect. But if Torah is real life, and this is brought out again by the theme of David HaMelech and his harp, and his musical instrument, the 5-string musical instrument. When the Ruach Tzifonis, when the north wind blew over his stringed instrument, that created music. And I want to continue now that the Talmud finishes off this theme, and it says, as soon as the sun rose, what happened? And by the way, it also goes back to the point of the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech. Moses didn't know when midnight was. David HaMelech did know when midnight was. He had this siyata d'shmaya, this help from Hashem, that Moshe Rabbeinu it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's work to reach that level. That was for the next generation. Moshe Rabbeinu's level was really to focus on that intellectual relationship and on that purely spiritual anane hakavod, clouds of glory, dynamic, and Moshe Rabbeinu was not the lo michutz lamachana. He was outside of the camp. This kind of other relationship. Whereas David HaMelech, and as we see, David HaMelech's avoda was his worship, his service of Am Yisrael was kevon she'ola amud hashachar. So he did this work study of Torah all night from midnight until morning, and then the elders, the sages of Israel, came into his room. Our master, your majesty the king, your people Israel needs parnasa, needs sustenance. And the Talmud then goes on to discuss a discussion which we'll go into, but it's interesting to me to see this parallel from the Safun, from the Ruach Tzefonis, from the north wind, which symbolizes physical wellness, and his study of Torah, his learning of Torah, which symbolizes bringing his physical wellness and his study of Torah together, making music, learning how to integrate the challenges of the concealment of Hashem, and at the same time to find joy and beauty in the search for Hashem. And then finally, that culminating in the idea of Parnasa, of his work, the Chachmei Yisrael, which indicates scholars, people who are focused on Torah, are focusing on Parnasa, on physical well-being, on sustenance. And so I think that this summarizes David HaMelech's work as integrating the upward relationship and the downward relationship, bringing heaven down to earth and bringing earth up to heaven, which also, by the way, might be one of the secrets behind the Magen David, the Star of David, which has a triangle facing, which is made of a triangle facing up and a triangle facing down. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer, Rotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakos es Yisrael, leficha chir